Senator Doug Jones has made history in Alabama a few times. For starters, he became the first Democrat in 25 years to clinch one of the state's U.S. Senate seats. But before his days in office, Jones was influential in a pair of landmark civil rights trials. When he was a U.S. attorney in the early 2000s, Jones brought two white supremacists to justice decades after a deadly attack. It was for their involvement in the 1963 Birmingham Church bombing. The bombing killed 4 young African-American girls, Denise McNair, Cynthia Wesley, Addie Mae Collins, and Carol Robertson. In his book, Bending Toward Justice, Jones describes how he prosecuted the case, as well as the painful lessons we can learn from it. Earlier, I sat down with the senator. We began with how the Birmingham bombing changed the course of civil rights. It wasn't until decades later that you had the opportunity to prosecute 2 of the Klansmen involved in the bombing. How did the passage of that time, nearly 40 years, help, and how did it hurt with those cases?
Well, at the end of the day, it helped us. I think it did, because part of our cases were built on admissions that Bobby Frank Cherry made, in which he bragged. I mean, he literally bragged about bombing this church and killing those kids. He bragged about other acts of what I call terrorism. That's exactly what it was that he committed with the black community in Birmingham when he lived in Birmingham. With Tommy Blanton, it was a little bit different because there were some changes in the law that really helped us there. We had mainly old evidence against Blanton, but there was one tape recording that we found that probably couldn't have been introduced into evidence until decades later. So it was the combination of things. It obviously hurt us because we believed that there were a lot of people that knew something about this that could have helped us. They either died or they were so infirm that they couldn't speak. So the passage of time was both good and bad. At the end of the day, we knew we were running on a deadline, that sooner or later everyone would be gone. And if and I write in this book about the fact that literally it seemed like as soon as we finished the Cherry trial, critical witnesses started dying. The mother of one of the children, an FBI agent, an informant. I mean, it was just one right after another, and it was almost like God had just kept them here to testify and to finish this job and to get some justice and healing.
You also wrote about the fact that the passage of time also helped you get a more impartial jury. Can you talk about that?
There's no question about that. I mean, look, we have changed. There are a lot of things that I think we still have a long way to go in race relations in this country. But clearly we have changed dramatically since the days of the 60s. And as I've said, people did not come and sit into that jury box with the same biases and prejudices. And they came in there wanting to give a fair trial to both sides. And again, you had a real open sore in Birmingham. This was the death of 4 children in a house of worship, and people felt like that wrong needed to be made right.
So you use the term open sore. Along the way, you say you also encountered people who said, quote, you were opening a festering old wound in Birmingham. What was your reply to that?
Well, my reply was, look, justice is justice, and we still have there is no statute of limitations on the murder of people, particularly children. And there's no statute of limitations for a reason, and that is sometimes it just takes time for the case to be put together. And we had a job, and we had a responsibility, and we owed it to the community, and we owed it to the families of these children to try to seek that justice. And I recognize that it was a difficult time for people to go back and look at. No one likes to go back and examine their own failings, and that's what people were doing in Birmingham. They were seeing their own failings of what happened when the system, not only of justice, but society had basically sheltered, kept people out of public office, restrooms, and lunch counters, all of those things. You don't like to go back and look at that, but it was a duty that we had to do, and it certainly was a positive for the people of Birmingham.
You say it was a duty that you had to do. Is that why you and Senator Cruz have partnered in a proposal to try and look at some of these civil rights era cold cases?
Absolutely. It was, that Cold Case Records Collection Act is a recognition that we can't always bring these cases to justice anymore. Cases that are 40, 50, 60 years old. The witnesses are gone. Some of the potential defendants are dead. Most of them are probably. And so, but being able to just open the records, bring those records in and open them up to families, to historians, to academics, to the media, to get those stories out, we can learn a lot of lessons for today about what happened in the 50s and 60s.
Like what?
Well, I think how people hurt people and kill people in the name of hate. We still see it. And that's what was going on. These children were killed because of the color of their skin and for no other reason. And that is just pure hate, pure and simple. And words matter. And if you go back and look at the history, especially with politicians in the South like George Wallace, Bull Connor, and they were all throughout the South, Ross Barnett in Mississippi, others, you know, those folks empowered people. They empowered people that would probably not otherwise commit a bombing or a murder to do these kind of things because they felt like they could do it and get away with it. I'm worried that we see some of that happening today.